My daughter spent 3 months teaching herself piano just to make a hamster trust her again, and it was the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed. When I brought Hammy home to live with us permanently after the incident in my daughter's second grade classroom, he was a wreck. During show and tell, some kid had brought in this screaming electronic robot toy that made siren noises right next to Hammy's cage, and the poor thing went ballistic trying to escape. He bit the teacher's hand deep enough to need stitches when she tried to calm him down, and the principal said he had to go immediately. The teacher begged me to adopt him instead of sending him to the shelter, because Sophia was the only kid Hammy had ever truly bonded with before the incident. My daughter hadn't stopped crying since I picked her up from school with Hammy's cage in the back seat. She kept saying Hammy didn't mean it over and over while I set up his new permanent habitat in her bedroom. The thing is, she was right. Hammy had been the sweetest classroom pet for 6 months before this happened. He'd let 30 different 7-year-olds hold him and never once showed aggression. But now, in his new home with us, he cowered in the corner of his cage, fur puffed up, tiny body shaking whenever we got close. For 2 weeks, Sophia tried everything. She'd sit by his cage reading stories in her softest voice, but he'd just burrow deeper into his bedding. She'd offer him sunflower seeds through the bars, but he wouldn't come out until we left the room. I watched my usually bubbly kid grow quieter each day as the class pet she'd saved from the shelter acted like she was dangerous. Then something weird happened. I was washing dishes one evening when I heard Sophia in her room making these soft humming sounds. I peeked through her door and saw her sitting cross-legged in front of Hammy's cage, humming random notes while doing her math homework. Hammy had actually poked his nose out of his hideout. The second Sophia noticed and got excited, he disappeared again, but she kept humming. The next day after school, she asked if she could use my old piano keyboard from the garage. I dragged it up to her room, thinking she'd bang on it for a few days and get bored. Instead, she sat at that keyboard for an hour pressing single keys very softly. First C, then she'd wait 10 seconds, then D, wait 10 seconds, then E. Hammy didn't come out, but he also didn't hide deeper. After watching him stay perfectly still through 20 different notes, Sophia looked up at me with these determined eyes and said, "He's listening." The next 3 weeks became piano boot camp. Sophia practiced scales at the quietest possible volume every single day after school. I thought she was torturing herself watching that hamster ignore her, but then I noticed Hammy had started emerging during the scales. He'd sit in the corner of his cage closest to the keyboard, tiny paws pressed against the bars, watching her fingers move. One afternoon, Sophia switched from scales to Mary, had a little lamb, played so slowly I could barely hear it from the hallway. Hammy crept all the way to the cage door and sat at the entrance, whiskers twitching. When he started grooming himself right there in the open, Sophia grabbed her hamster care book and pointed at the page. "Mom, it says when hamsters groom themselves around you, it means they feel safe." By the end of her 3rd week of practicing, she'd created what she called Hammy's playlist, which was a few simple songs played in the same order every day at 4 p.m. Hammy had memorized the entire routine. During Twinkle Twinkle, he'd emerge from his burrow. Mary had a little lamb meant climbing to his 2nd level. During Ode to Joy, he'd run on his wheel in perfect rhythm with the song, stopping when the music stopped, starting when it resumed. The alphabet song was last, and that's when Hammy would come to the cage door and wait. Then the teacher called to check on Hammy and mentioned the kid who'd brought the robot toy felt terrible about what happened. Sophia hung up and went straight to her room without playing Hammy's playlist. I found her sitting on her bed, staring at the cage. "What if he never lets me hold him again?" she asked. "What if he's broken forever?" Hammy was watching her from his hideout, and I swear he looked worried too. The next day, an apology card arrived from the robot kid that said, "I'm sorry I scared Hammy and made him bitey." Sophia stared at it for 20 minutes before walking to her keyboard. She sat down with the card in her lap and started playing something new that wasn't from Hammy's playlist. It was "You've Got a Friend in Me" from Toy Story, but played so gently it sounded like a lullaby. Halfway through, she started crying and had to stop. That's when I heard a tiny squeak from the cage, then another. Hammy was standing on his hind legs, pawing at the cage door, making these desperate little sounds I'd never heard before. Sophia quickly switched back to the alphabet song to calm him down, but then she sneezed. The music stopped. Hammy stood up again and made this squeaking sound that I swear sounded like, "Why did you stop?" My daughter looked at him, looked at me in the doorway, then slowly reached for the cage door, opened it, and held her hand perfectly still at the entrance. We waited a long 30 seconds, then Hammy sniffed her finger once, twice, and climbed into her palm. She carried him to the keyboard bench, set him on her lap, and finished the alphabet song while he sat perfectly still on her knee. When the last note faded, Hammy crawled up her arm and nestled into the crook of her elbow. Sophia started sobbing these huge, silent tears and looked down at the apology card still on the bench, then at Hammy curled against her arm. Should we forgive him too? Hammy made a soft chirping sound and burrowed deeper into her elbow.